Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you're at in this big, beautiful world we call Earth. My name is Cody, and I am the host of Behind the Premium. And have we got an exclusive interview for you today? I'll let this person introduce himself. Ken, you want to take it over and introduce yourself? Give us a quick little 30-second to 90-second rundown.
Sure. Thanks for having me. My name's Ken Wosczyna. I've been in this space, in the employee benefit advisor space, for the last 26 years, and I could not wait to come on to this podcast just based on the title, Behind the Premium, because there is so much going on behind the premium in today's market. So I'll keep it short and look forward to diving in. Are we frozen? I think we froze there for a minute.
Are you there? Did I lose
Yep.
you? I
Yep.
think my internet cut out on me for a minute, so I apologize.
All right.
Yeah, so welcome to the podcast, Ken. We appreciate you having there. Gotta love technology, especially on a Monday after morning, I should say. But anyways, a pleasure to have you. Yes, I've been actually looking forward to having you on the call as well. We met up through LinkedIn a few weeks ago, been kind of chatting back and forth. You actually participated in one of our last roundtables, and I think it was a pretty fun discussion. I don't know about you, but what your thoughts were, but I definitely thought it was a good one.
I thought it was great that we all were on the same mindset, and I think it for future it would be nice to have someone that shares a different opinion to get a little
A
back and forth, or maybe a
little
different
spicy
viewpoint.
take.
Yeah, I think we're all kind of supporting the same mindset and the same goal, which is nice. Um,
For sure. For sure. Well, Ken, yeah, I was waiting for you to bring those spicy takes. So next time you come on, make sure you bring them. So, um, but anyways, we're here to talk about you and kind of get to know you a little bit better. So why don't we just start off with kind of your origin story? How'd you get started in this line of work, and tell us a little bit about your background, your experience, and your skill set.
so that's a we could spend all day on that one question, but just to dive back into the beginning. I grew up in the Hartford area, Hartford, Connecticut, where you have Hartford's insurance capital of the world. And being in this industry is the last thing that I thought I'd do. Came across it through wanting to get into the sales side of business. And I was recruited into how do you say it? Let's say a voluntary benefit supplemental insurance agency that had their first office in Connecticut. And I figured, you know what, this is probably the last thing of interest to me. I said, who in the world would want to be in the insurance industry? It just sounds so boring. And that was my take. And remember, I was in my, what was that, 26 years ago. So late 20s, didn't really have a concept for what insurance was and how it worked. I just knew that I had to have it and pay for it. And
Right.
what happened is as I got in deeper over the years, I really got into focusing on income replacement, which is disability, right? So you see people at their worst, right, where they're really struggling, meaning they have some type of health condition and they can't work. And
Mhm.
that was the light that went off for me with regards to how much out of pocket that people are responsible for. So I have a different viewpoint when I come across in today's, let's say, age or whatever you want to call it, today's market,
Mhm.
what we consider affordable. Um, for the average employee, a lot of the health insurance that we offer is not affordable. And I know I'm kind of jumping here, but just to go back, when I come across different, let's say, brokers, a lot of them come from the health insurance carrier side and then have migrated through their career into the advisor broker world. And the
Mhm.
challenge with that is a lot of them still bring that health insurance company carrier mindset into the space. And I view it from a different angle, right? I view it, yes, I understand it's important for the employer, but I also view it from what I experienced to see employees that are insured but still are struggling financially to keep themselves afloat. So I think, that's a unique experience. And at the time going through it, I don't think I truly understood what I was seeing. Um,
Mhm.
but as you age, your financial responsibility grows, and then your actual income becomes more and more important. And then really what's important is what happens with when you're without it.
Right.
So I'm kind of jumping into a different avenue here, but that's really how I got into it. I was recruited, and I figured I'd give it a shot for a year. Those were my words, and that was 26 years ago.
Oh,
Um,
geez, that's awesome. That's a good run you got there. So when you talk about coming at it from a different angle or a different lens of how things are looking, I think that's important for any professional coming into an overly populated uh, profession such as insurance or benefits, things like that. Um, do you mind going a little bit more in depth on what that kind of yeah, I know you've mentioned it, but do you mind kind of going a little bit more down on what you feel your specialty is that you bring to the crowd?
yeah, sure. I mean, one, you ask good questions. I mean, I just looked at that question in a few different ways in terms of, I think us as people, one of the biggest challenges we have is looking at the same situation from a different lens,
Hmm.
right? That's always going to be the case, right? And really, what I do specifically is I help employers manage their health insurance, and I used to say health care, but it's really health insurance budget, while still offering the employees plans that are affordable, which they can use without financial strain. And that's the key at the end there. They're able to use their plan without financial strain. So we look at affordability. I mean, this was a big thing in like the ACA, the Affordable Care Act.
Hmm. Hmm.
The reality is it may be affordable on paper, right? And it's compliant. But when you get in there, I'm talking when we're inside of that boardroom and we're making a decision, it's usually the employees, or let's say the C-level people that are highly compensated. So yes, it's affordable to them, but if we ask the employees or the average employee, what do you think of our healthcare, our health insurance plan? Is it truly affordable? Most of them, they pick their plans based on how much it costs and not what it does.
Yeah,
So the reality is it's not, and sometimes that's a tough pill to swallow. And I'm generalizing here. It's all relative to the industry that you're in the region.
correct, correct. And I think too that, being a broker as yourself, a lot of times you're able to see the impact that the insurance plan is actually having on the population of the company because of how many people are actually engaged or enrolled in it. Would you agree to that assumption as well?
Well, first, and I know I get categorized as a broker. I don't consider myself a broker. And that what I mean by that is I think that's the old model, right?
Right.
Broker is the in between the employer and the insurance company. And all
Hmm.
they're really doing is going out to the different carriers and brokering that back to the employer. I like to say we're going to advise you, right? We're going to figure out where all these dollars are being allocated. Are they doing what they're supposed to? And help that employer retain some of the overspend, because there's a ton of overspend.
Yeah.
And then what was the second part of that question? It was
Well, just how many people were participating in a
so,
plan.
yep. So I look at it as usually in the first 30 seconds to 5 minutes when I meet a new employer, I usually get a gist from where they stand. And what I mean is, I just ask them the question straight out, like, why do you offer health insurance to your employees? And my favorite, the best, are the ones that say, you know what, because we understand if we offer comprehensive coverage, this will attract and retain quality employees. And they get it, because it's a large cost, but it also helps employees feel good about their job, understand that they don't have risk of if they actually have to use it. It's something that we used to refer to it as the hidden paycheck. And I used to go back to employers and say, are you explaining to your employees how much you're actually spending on their health care? Right. And that usually used to be missed. Now we have things like electronic benefit statements, and it's getting better and better. But an employee, especially we have a lot of manufacturing companies here in Connecticut, and we were seeing employees jump for an extra $3, $5 an hour. And I said to the employer, I'm like, are you explaining that you're spending about $7,000 in addition to their base salary just on their health insurance? So they may jump for that extra raise in let's say pay,
Hmm.
but maybe the health plan isn't that good.
Right.
Or they're transitioning and they're not getting a $7,000 contribution on addition to their base. So that's where I see it. And then the flip side of that is, and I got to say, I'm fortunate enough to be able to pick and choose at this point in my career with who I want to engage with.
Hmm.
Um, some of the employers that say, you know what, we're just trying to offer the lowest possible health insurance we can because we have to. And those
Yeah.
are usually bad clients, right?
Yeah.
So,
And I
I
think
mean,
I, I think to go along with that too is, I've interviewed quite a few different business owners, and I've also interviewed benefit designers, advocates, advisors, brokers, HR people across the board. And one thing that I'm starting to find a lot of commonality in is that a lot of the C-level don't really know what's in their benefits package. The one thing that they're really just trying to take a look at is, okay, this is how much it's going to cost me. All right, and does this pretty much cover everything we need, right? And they're not like into the weeds of actually what happens, because I've called out a couple of C-level people on calls or in podcasts before, and they can't honestly break it down for me. They can't tell me how many visits they get per year for preventative care, or they can't tell me how many employees are actually enrolled on it, right? And so it seems like there's becoming a disconnect between the C-level and the actual plan itself. It just seems like one of those things that are just getting pushed off. And I think that that's causing a lot of the miscommunication or lack of coverage uh, in plans. What's your thoughts on that?
that's I mean, let's just say it as it is. I don't think any, let's say, business owner or C-level executive, even HR, they did not get into their business to manage health insurance spend, right? That was always something that was kind of a given, right? It was just part of it. Yeah, we have healthcare. What are we doing? We're going to offer it. Well, it's increased. I could be off on the number, but it's over 50% in the last decade. So
Hmm.
all of a sudden, it's one of our top line items on our budget, and we have to address it,
Hmm.
right? The ones that don't wait until it becomes too painful, the increases are unmanageable, and they have to do something. So that's
Yeah.
where I feel that my role is very important as an advisor to say, you know what, we're going to look at this in multiple ways. In the first way is we're going to understand where all the dollars are being allocated, to really pull back the layers of the onion and say, you know, well, how much is going to claims? How much is going to administration? How much is carrier profit? Do we understand that? And then start to look at, are we on the right plan? And then this is very different than when I started in the business. And then we look at plan designs and what type of coverage we actually can offer. It's kind of a reverse mindset, is first understanding where our spend is
Hmm.
and then getting into designing the plan. And then we can talk about driving or steering employees. But all those things are the reason I went through that long explanation is going back to the lens, right? Before I could come in and really, let's say, tell them everything I know about this space, I need to
Hmm.
understand how they're viewing it, right?
Right.
And a lot of times they're viewing it on an annual basis, on a 12 months basis. And that's one of the things that I really do that I think is different. I said, you know what, instead of looking at our health insurance spend on a 12-month contract or a 12-month calendar year, we're going to look at this on a multi-year strategy,
Okay.
right? And start
Yeah.
to control it based on multiple years instead of here comes renewal. How are we going to react?
Yeah, that makes sense. Um, so that kind of raises the question as well is, what kind of plans do you try to push your or advise your companies that you work with to go into? Because I know that there's quite a few different plan types that they can choose from, and this you mentioned data being one of them. It's very limited on the amount of data that you get on a fully funded plan versus a self-funded plan. So I'm kind of curious, what do you advise your companies to go on? What type of
So I'm laughing because it's got kind of a weighted question, right? And I know you
right?
know me a little, but so I truly, for 90% of the groups that I work with, none of them are fully insured. Okay. And that is, I'll say this probably again in this conversation, but it truly is regional where you are in the country.
Mhm.
I think I might have mentioned on the last podcast where I was out in Ohio and I came across a group and I was in shock how low their fully insured premiums were. It was probably the first time in the last decade where I told an employer, you need to stay here, right? This
Yeah.
is an acceptable loss. This is too low. I usually use the threshold of 7,000. I said, if you're spending less than 7,000 per employee per year, stay fully insured. If you're not, there's so much excess. And that's where, going to your question about data, right? So when we're in that position of actually having access to data, that's really where let's say the wheels come off and you can lift the hood and really get into the mechanics of how the plan works. And when you're in that partially self-funded space, I like to use the words alternative funding. When you
Mhm.
start to see data and you're in that space, you can truly create custom plan designs, right? And when you're creating a custom plan design, I'm creating it, right? I'm creating it based on the usage, that the utilization of the employees, right? So sometimes we get in there and we start to look at the plans and saying, why is 30% of your team overinsured? And they don't know, and that's okay. It says, well, why are we overspending this amount? Why don't we get them on a plan that actually fits? And
Mhm.
then you start to look at the group and say, you know what, we've got 4 different generations that are employed here. They all need to use their health care differently. So you have to have 4 different plan options, right? The only way around that is if you're an employer that is printing money and you say, you know what, we're going to cover 100% of this plan, and everybody's going to take it, of course, because they're not paying anything out of pocket. There's no skin in the game. That doesn't
Right.
happen too often. But
Right.
that's really where I go with that kind of mindset is, one, it's never the same. It's never the same, right? I've worked for brokerages that say, you know what, we have a proprietary plan for this industry. And I'm thinking, like, you can't do that with health insurance. It
Yeah.
doesn't work like that. This isn't property and casualty insurance. This is very different. Um, there are similarities in different industries, but the day you tell me, all right, we have X amount of heart conditions in this industry, it's very different than this industry. I just don't believe it.
That makes sense. Yeah, I can understand where you're coming from, where, it's regional, it's by industry, there's a lot of different things. I mean, a blue-gray color is definitely going to be potentially a different threshold than a white collar in the same area, right? Maybe not the same industry, but it is interesting that you state that, everything needs to be customized. Um, and I feel like the fully funded plans that are available out there are the kind of those cookie cutter trims that you get on your car, right?
Yeah,
You
yeah,
can only select between one, two, and three options, and it comes with stuff that you want, maybe don't really need or use, but it is what it is. So I like how you're pushing people to self-funded because I totally agree that that alternative financing that you call it is a great way to customize those plans because everybody is unique. You kind of alluded to it a few times with the age demographics even being included into the plan, right? You got old people that have chronic diseases, and then you got younger people that are more or less young and healthy and trying to average out the platform. And so one of my questions, one thing that you kind of really tout that I like is that you're always looking for the best plan, best advantage, best cost savings for your clients. And I think that that's the role of any advisor or broker out there is to basically do that. So when you're looking at these numbers for your clients, I mean, like what are the main kind of core foundation either data set or mechanics or structure do you look to implement with your clients as a building foundation to build these custom plans for? Does that make
Well,
sense?
you need to, yeah. I was just thinking the best way to say it is it's got to be in the first few questions of what are they currently doing, and I'm referring to, let's say, creating a new relationship with a new client. The ones that are already clients, I already know where they're starting from because I'm advising them.
Hmm.
Um, Usually, when someone works with me, when an employer works with me, the second year is always the best. And they always say, "Well, what do you mean?" I'm like, "Well, after we've been through this a year, we have a true understanding of your data. Data. That you can never have enough. But then we
Hmm.
can really, after coming onto that, the best thing is being able to predict that renewal as it comes. Like we already know where we're going to be based on the utilization. It's very different than that
Hmm.
fully insured space. But the ones that are still fully insured, and that's going to become less and less of a number. Right now, so I'm in the Northeast, right? In my back door, any employer that has more than 200 lives, 70% of them are already in the alternative funding space. So that's self-funding space, right?
Hmm.
And just to be clear for the audience, when I say self-funding, this is not self-insuring. Very different, right? We're not saying, one of our employees has a claim and we're going into our assets and paying the claim. That's
Hmm.
not it. This is just self-funding. So there's safety nets behind the scene. So back to your question, I usually ask them right now, like, how are you currently predicting your renewals? Or what's your process like? And then on top of that, I usually say, well, what's a successful relationship between you and your advisor or your broker? What does that look like? Just to get an idea of what they think success is. And when I usually ask that question, sometimes it goes two different ways. Like I'll give you an example. I was working with a 200 life group, and they said, we're really happy. We got a 0% flat renewal this last year, and they were fully insured, right? So I was salivating from the mouth here. Like I'm like, oh my god. Um, so I said, well, what does that mean? What does that mean to you? Do you think your advisor did a good job? Like, yeah, he did a great job. We switched from UHC to Aetna. I'm like, well, I'm gonna give you something from a different point of view. I said, well, what that means to me is that UHC was overcharging you. They were offering a double-digit renewal. Aetna's willing to take on the risk for free, the same risk. So what that means to me, they're about 260. So they're paying 2.6 million. So I'm going
Hmm.
to give you an example based on a million just to make it easy. So what that means to me is that 3% of the population or less than that is representing 99% of all large claims. That means 97% of that total cost, that
Hmm.
premium, is
Hmm.
guaranteed loss. So if you're in the alternative funding, the self-funding space, you're retaining that and
Right.
you're using that to pay for that 3%. So to break it down even more, I mean, $1 million, you've got, what do you got? You got three different categories, right? You got your 15% is basically admin, right? 25%, I'm trying to do this in my head. 25% would be what? Your stop loss, and then a $600,000 claims fund. So if you're running that low, does that make sense before I dive in? We
Yeah,
got our
makes total sense.
so that
Yeah.
equals the total $1 million. So the
Hmm.
$600,000 of claims fund, if they're running at 85 or If they're that low, they're probably running at a 65% loss ratio. That's probably around 400,000. So that means there's 200,000 of unused claims fund. If you're fully insured, you don't see any of that. And that 200,000 just became carrier profit.
Yep.
So in the alternative funding space, you keep the 200,000. It's yours. You use it. You use it for to pay future claims, or you build a reserve for the following year. So
Yeah.
that's kind of, that example I gave is kind of tough to go through, like just verbally. You kind of got to see it broken down.
Yep.
But those are the things that I think most of the employers out there are missing. The ones that are still fully insured, we're still looking at it as, you know what's an acceptable increase? That's usually
Mhm.
what they say. We're okay going up as long as it's less than 10%. So that's what I see a lot
And
of. And then I usually flip that. I'm kind of going off here, but I'm going to go off. So if they're okay with that, so I usually say to them, listen, if you're increasing between 7 and 10% each year, your health insurance premium will double in a 7 to a 9 year time frame. That's just compounded. It's like investing,
yeah,
right? Compounded interest, but this is a compounded loss.
yeah.
So
And it's interesting because you have just about the same amount of protection you do in a self-funded versus a fully funded, right? And in more cases, you have more flexibility, more freedom to recoup some of those costs rather than just paying them, like you just said. So yeah, I'm totally with you on that one. Um, but it does take a like to your point, it does take a few years to get people worked into that ideal situation, right? You mentioned year two is your favorite for a lot of these people because you've already worked through it. How do you sell how do you sell a lot of your clients on this multi-year strategy when there's still a lot of variables that are unknown in there that could throw this multi-year strategy out of whack, so to say?
you must be a podcast host, because that's another good question. So two ways. One, you have to explain the safety, the security of going that route, because there's a lot of fear, right? And the way, put it this way, I've never had a client go backwards, right? I never have brought someone into the alternative self-funding space and then go back to fully insured. If that happens, that means the plan was designed wrong from day one,
Mhm.
right? So this is where the education happens. You have to say, you know what, we're going to show you this plan, but this is the worst case, right? This isn't going to change. It doesn't go up and down each month. It stays the same throughout the year. The employees see exactly the same thing. They get a card with a logo on it, and they use their healthcare the same way. The difference is now we can see where the money is going. But I said, from your side, you, the employer, there isn't a risk, right? We're not at risk at going beyond this amount. And what we call it is our max claims fund, right? What
Mhm.
happens on the positive side, on the good scenario, is that we don't hit our max, and you retain that money. So that's the first thing. The next thing I do is I say, this is a group, and I have multiple case studies. I usually show them a similar size group and say, here's what happened to this group that is your size, right, over a 3 year period, right, and show them how it goes up and down, right. And I always remind them, this is what I'm talking about with multi-year. When you're in that fully insured space, when you have a claim, it lives forever, right? It never
Mhm.
comes down. When you have a claim, a large claim in the self-funding space, when that claim goes, when it comes off, let's say the person goes on to another job, they unfortunately they pass away, they go on Medicare, something happens, it comes off of your utilization and lowers your total cost. So that's very different than the fully insured space.
Yeah.
So, in addition to that, I tell them, I said, listen, there is a large spectrum, right, of self or partially self funding. We're not going 0 to 60 in the first year. We're going to slowly start to add different solutions as we move through this. And that's what I
Right.
mean by multiple year, especially right in the first year. I'll go another way. A lot of brokers, not advisors, are using the level funding words, right? They're saying, we're going to go level funding. And I'm
Hmm.
like, okay, what does, and sometimes I ask the employers this that are already level funded, I said, what does that mean to you?
Right.
And just let them answer. Well, they kind of know. They're like, well, yeah, we're better than fully insured. I'm like, yeah, you are. But do you understand the contracts? Like, if you run well, how much of your surplus is sent back to you? Have you dove into the pharmacy? Are you receiving your rebates?
Yeah.
When a lot of times they can't answer those questions. And I usually tell them, because I don't like to ask questions I don't know the answers to. But I just explained to them, I said, let's say you have a surplus and you only get 50% of it back. So, well, why are you sharing your money with the insurance carrier? Why don't you
Yeah.
take 100% of it? Oh, we didn't know we could do that. Or on the pharmacy, I'm like, well, you basically remove the carrier profit margin from moving from fully insured to level funding, but you're still inside that carrier structure, and that's their business model, right?
Hmm.
So they may not be getting it from the medical side of it, but they're receiving extra on the pharmacy.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I think it goes back to what we were talking about a few minutes ago. I feel like there's a great fiduciary responsibility wake up call that's kind of happening right now, because there's a lot of people that uh, are starting to ask these hard questions to brokers and advisors, right? They are saying, where is this money going? Why am I not able to recoup? Why am I not being able to do this? Prime example of this is Mark Cuban, with his whole prescription model that he's working on. There was a couple of articles about him paying 8 times the amount for an employee's prescription. Then he started pulling on that string, and that string became very revealing to him that he wasn't getting the very best plan that he could out there. His eyes kind of awoke into this difference between fully funded and self-funded, and I think that a lot of leadership don't really realize, or don't want to realize, that they still have the same fiduciary responsibility in a self-funded plan that they do on a fully funded plan. And if I'm going to be in that fiduciary responsibility, I think I'd want to be in the one where I have the most control, and it's not a black box or a line item that I have no control over. I I don't know. What would you say to somebody like that for me?
So there's multiple things there. Like, I mean, I love what Mark Cuban's doing. I've listened to him on podcasts before. He's doing the right things. Where it gets kind of a little, let's say, murky is what size group or what population is he referring to?
Yep.
And I think a lot of us, there's so much information out there. I've had this happen with employers too. They start stating these rules and mandates, and I'm like, yeah, you're right, but you're referring to mandates that are relative to the individual insurance. This is a group plan that acts and works differently.
Hmm.
Um, so there's a little confusion in there. I mean, he is, and I won't say any. I mean, just the fact that he's using his voice to get out there and talk is great, right? I love it. Like, I was on a podcast with him. I'm saying I watched it. I wasn't on with him, with one of the PBMs, and he was just going back and forth with the PBM. And I was like, I love what you're saying.
Hmm.
Demanding the transparency, the whole fiduciary responsibility. Until we had these lawsuits, I think it was all fluff, right?
Yep.
Like, we would say this to an employer, you're a fiduciary, and they'd kind of be, really, am I? Like, who's going to come after me?
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
it's all relative to the side. I mean, I was trying to go through. I was doing two things at once. I was trying to look at my LinkedIn. I posted about a recent lawsuit where they pulled in the advisor, right? And I was like, this is real. Okay, so now someone like me is involved, the employer's involved, in the insurance carrier. So everyone that contributed in making these decisions decisions now is truly responsible, that's real.
Hmm.
Okay, that's what we need. Um, there,
100%.
so that's really it. I mean, earlier this last year, I spent a month with the Pharmacy Benefit Institute of America, which really focuses on the pharmacy spend and what's going on, and what does transparent truly mean. Because everyone says, we're 100% pass through on our PBM. I'm like, are you really? And there is so much hidden behind those pharmacy contracts where you really need to get a specialist involved, right? Like I know it from a high level and I know it more than, let's say, 80% of the brokers out there. But when it comes down to managing pharmacy, I need to use someone that knows more about it than I do.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's so much there.
Yeah. And I think you bring up a good point too. I mean, you've spent a lot of time kind of on both sides, right? Broker and as a strategist kind of thing. So, I'm really curious, where does the traditional brokership break down for an employer? And what should a business leader be asking their broker that they're probably not asking right now?
So thinking from the employer viewpoint, what should you be asking your broker?
Hmm.
I would say the first thing is do we understand, or could you tell me where all of our premium is going? And that's just making it simple. I like to say is I say this question to the employers, do you understand where all of the total spend is being allocated? And then just have an understanding of, if you're going to spend, the average in my back door is about $10,000 per employee per year. I would like to know where that money is going and how it's being used. Um, but in terms of what's the relationship now, I think for the advisors that have, let's say, educated themselves and really understood now that we're going through, and I say this over and over again, but we're going through a healthcare renaissance, right? Like things are changing. And
100%.
we need to understand as advisors how it's changed. It's like back in the day, we would work with one of the BUCAs, let's say Blue Cross United, Cigna, or Aetna. A lot of that was relationship driven. Did they invite us to the golf outings? Did they take us out for happy hour? I mean, that really was it. And that's, for me personally, that's where the light went off. I said, what am I doing here?
Yeah.
Is my goal just to make money? Or am I actually helping the employer and their employees access healthcare? So we're going to see some major changes. I think from the advisor standpoint, I think we're going to see a lot of advisors, or a lot of smaller shops have more success. And what I mean by that is, in the past, it used to matter. Let's say I'm one of the top. I'm the top. I'm the largest agency, and we have a large book of business with one of the bukas. So we're going to
Hmm.
put you there because we know we can negotiate or manipulate the rate and get you lower rates because you have a large book of business there. Well, now why does that matter? We're self-funding.
Yeah.
The rate is based on your utilization and your staff, not the insurance pool. So that's a very different. I think that's gonna happen now. I'm seeing it already. When we come across an opportunity that it's with one of the big box brokers, and I just say to them, I'm like, they've got 10,000 employees. How many do work with you? Oh, we work with three. I'm like, okay, so you're with one of the largest agencies in America, and you're working with three employees. You're like,
It-
where's the
y-
correlation there?
yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting that you say that because, I've worked in quite a few different industries, advised in quite a few different industries, and my background is in UI UX design. So you see it, that's what I design, right? And so for me, it is really interesting because, like, for the healthcare industry, I agree 100%. We are going through a renaissance right now. I feel like I was just reading an article a few weeks ago talking about how this generation of upcoming professionals are actually pulling away from the big commercial, and they're going with smaller, more, I don't want to say captive, but they're going with like more, what's the lack of better term here, boutique-ish type of small in-house thing, to your point, self-funded options, because they recognize that things are not working in the current state. And so they're looking for all these alternatives, and they don't want to just be a number. They want to be, the good old boy, we'll call it, we'll kind of up your area, right? Boston with Cheers, where you walk into the bar and everybody knows your name, right? They
Yeah.
want that kind of boutique feel, right? And I agree with you. Like, a lot of people are their book of business has gotten so big, like a lot of their clients have become just numbers to them. And I feel like it is a not only a renaissance within the healthcare industry, but I think it's a different workforce generation that's coming up, that's demanding a lot of different needs, um, that we haven't seen before. Would you agree or disagree with that?
Yeah, 100% agree. And I'll even add to it. It's, we talk about, when I say we, I'm talking to the people in my industry, right? In the advisor,
Yes.
what we talk about, the system is broken. And yeah, it's broken for the user, but who is it not broken for? It's not, it's one of the best business models in America for the insurance carriers, right? And
Hmm.
you start to look at that, we start to say, like, what other business has increased by that amount each year over year over year, and they didn't have to tell you why. I mean, that's crazy. So we see the vertical integration, right? We see it with hospitals, we see it with doctors, we see it with the carriers and the pharmacy, but we don't talk about this too often. It's the broker, right? Not advisor, but the broker has also become part of the healthcare supply chain,
True.
right?
Yeah.
So if they're
Good point.
getting increases each year on their compensation by being in that fully insured space, one, I can't blame them, right? It's like you're getting a raise for doing exactly the same thing that you did for the last decade, right? Or last decades. And you really don't have to change much. So that, I think, is an opportunity for someone like me and for other advisors that are saying, you know what, we're gonna challenge the status quo. We're gonna do something different. We're gonna start to identify um, with what employers and employees truly want. And it's going to happen somewhat in a reactive stage where someone at that employer is going to say, you know what, why don't we understand why this costs what it costs? And,
Yeah.
how come our employees are struggling to use their health care? So those are the things that I like to talk about. And I've learned the hard way by saying too much, right? You have to do it in small steps, right? And we're going to see a lot of, which I love, we're going to see real care navigation, right? Like it used to be talked about. It used to be like, hey, we got a concierge, we got employee advocacy. But the reality is when an employee actually tries to use it, they're just as confused as they were when they started. A lot of times they're just calling into someone that's pulling up their plan design and saying, you can go here, here, and there. Like, you know what, I can see that on my app, or I can see that. It's not really getting to the point of saying, you know what, let's incentivize employees to use quality, low cost quality care.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
No, that's interesting. I like that. Well, we're coming up almost to the top of the hour here, and in just a few minutes, I have a few more questions. Before I jump into those last few questions, did you have anything that you wanted to bring up or talk about specifically?
um, I mean, you ask great questions that bring it out. So specifically, I would just say to the employers managing their healthcare spend, what is it going to take? I mean, to get you to view it in a different way, or to stop doing the same thing and expecting different results.
Yep. You just took one of my questions. So let's just jump right
Okay.
into it.
All
So
right.
my so that was going to be my next question was literally what do you say to business owners to get them to have that aha moment of what you had when you were at that conference and realized that you were just kind of selling a product because somebody was taking you to lunch or to golf or something like this. How do you get them to really wake up and see that there are better options for not only them but also their employees as well?
So it's relative to who I'm speaking to, but let's use C-level. Let's use the CEO, the CFO. The best, what's worked for me is, and you have to do this with a larger employer so I can get public data, and I'm referring to 5500s. And I
Hmm.
show them, I said, here's your healthcare spend, health insurance spend for the last, depending on how much data I can get, but here it is for the last 3 to 5 years. And I show them, here's your trend, and I think Daniel from our podcast mentioned this, but if you look at like how much your health insurance increased since COVID, a lot of times it's 40%. And just to show them from a business mindset of managing a line item, forget all the other stuff, forget the plan designs, forget which carrier, all that stuff, just as here's the cost. How are you controlling this cost? That's
Yeah.
probably been the number one thing that I've used to, let's say, open their eyes. And I'll tell you, it's tough to do the smaller the employer, right? Because I need
Hmm.
to ask them for that info. A lot of times they don't have it or I can't get it, right? So it's been somewhat challenging. And in my back door, that's usually an employer that has less than 100 employees. Like I can't have those same conversations. A lot of times they don't know, and a lot of times that it's like in one ear, out the ear. They dealt with it last year, and they're moving on.
Yeah, it's one of those. I had a broker tell me once that they do not want to talk to their clients except for renewal time because they don't want to rock the boat. And that was a huge red flag to me for some reason. And I'm like thinking, you know what? This is going to be the advice that I'm going to give to every business owner, C-level person that I talk to about their healthcare premium is how much is your broker or your benefits advisor making off of this deal, right? Because if it's a flat rate and they can make it worth their while, great. If it's a commission based and they see that their their percentage keeps climbing by astronomical amounts, that's a good head scratcher to really have that aha moment because you're just giving your broker almost a uh, a percentage of increase raise every single year that you just blindly re-sign without asking where all this is coming from. Am I wrong or am I
No,
right?
no, you're 100% right. I'd be curious to see what size groups that broker was working with. But I do understand that's an old mindset, right? Talk to them once a year. Don't really like just let it go. I mean, I used to partner with brokers when I was in that supplemental voluntary benefit space, and I was shocked as I went on multiple meetings with them. This is the beginning, the infancy of my career. I knew nothing, right? I didn't really understand this, but he used to come in and used to say, here I am again. I'm the bearer of bad news again. That was his line, and I'm like, that's terrible, man. Like that's how you communicate this is just like, hey, it's going up. And now I know what I know. I said, you should have said, it's going up and I'm also making more money. And I'm going to take all of you to lunch each month, every month, because I'm making so much more money for doing nothing. Um, yeah, but yeah, no, there's a level of engagement, right? And you don't need to speak to an employer every month or every week, but someone has to be communicating with the point person there on a weekly basis, or if not more, and you base it based on what their needs are, right? The worst case scenario, they need to be seeing what's going on with their plan. How many claims have been incurred this week? How many this month? What are we doing to manage these large claims? I mean, that's the key, I think. It's like, how are we evacuating large claims? And that doesn't
Yeah.
necessarily mean totally evacuating it, moving it off the plan, But there's so many things you can do when you dive into a large claim. And those are the drivers. So a lot of that is the frequency and severity of the large claims. How many do we have? How severe are they? What are we doing to manage them? You know, it could be as simple as managing the drug spend. I
Hmm.
mean, that's where I've aligned myself with partners that will help me do that, right? Because I don't want to go in and manage claims. I'll be straight. Like, I can't do that and then continue to have a successful business. That's someone needs to be dedicated to doing that one thing, the touching of back and forth with the employer. And what I found too is you'll get the employer that say, you know what, this is what I want. Like, I don't need to have you guys, like, every month is too much or every week is too much. They'll tell you where they want to be. Um,
Right.
and then what were you?
Sorry, what was that? Are you back?
Yeah, I'm back. Did I lose you?
Yeah, no, you're good. You're
My
good.
my. Can you see me? Because my screen is only.
Oh, looks like we just lost him for just 1 second. We'll get him back up on here. While we're waiting for Ken to come back up online, I'm curious what you guys have to say as well. Have you had your aha moment yet? If you are a leadership team or benefits administrator or anything like that for a company, have you had your aha moment that we were just talking about? Just curious if you guys have had that. If not, feel free to drop that in the comments below while we wait for Ken to get back. Well, looks like he's back. We got him. All
Yeah.
right. Cool. Uh, so yeah, no, great stuff, man. Seriously, I think it is all about just kind of trying to get everybody to take the blinders off. I feel like that is a huge thing right now. I think that it's a huge conversation that'll even people within the industry are talking about, but in my opinion, they're talking post-claim stuff, like after the fact of trying to fix stuff, and it's it doesn't really work that way, right? In my opinion, it's like to your point you made earlier, it's trying to do the same thing over and over and over again and expecting a different outcome, and I feel like that's where we're totally struck. And I like how you're trying to ask questions. I would say more on the pre-claim side of things, like trying to get the ball rolling on that side. Because let's be honest, that's where a lot of the gaps form because of the employees, because of lack of education or lack of knowledge or expertise in this area, which you don't have to have a lot of expertise, especially if you've got people helping you navigate, right? And so those are those are just some of the things that I was thinking of while you were kind of off offline there for a second. But one side that I think that we all need to kind of really realize as well is, it's easy to talk about healthcare from a financial standpoint, but it's the human side of that. And you alluded to that a little bit earlier in our conversation. And I want to kind of loop back to that is you said, hey, this might work for us fiscally. It might work with our bottom line and our budget, but does it really hit the human side of things? And you talked about the ripple effect. I just want to retouch upon that again. Like, what are some examples of that ripple effect of poor decision making when it comes to the planning side of it that you've seen over your 25-year career? I'm curious.
So you have multiple touch or multiple items there. So I'm thinking back to it was 2003, I think, or So I was up in New Haven at the New Haven Manufacturing Association, and again, this is the infancy of my career. Two different senior brokers were there talking to the manufacturers about, how HRAs and HSAs were going to come in and create consumer-driven healthcare and change the landscape of how we access health insurance. That was 2003, right? That did not happen, right? We all know that, right? So my whole thing now is, and don't get me wrong, HSAs, especially HSAs, have their place for the right demographic. It's
Hmm.
usually not let's say the lower compensated employees. It's usually somewhere where, like, I'll give, like, myself, like, I've had an HSA for years. I banked money in that thing, right? Because I understand the triple tax advantage. I use it as a growth account. Long story short, my whole I write a monthly newsletter called K.I.S S, Keep It Simple Smart, right? Healthcare 101, right?
Hmm.
And I think the simpler we make it for the end users, for the employees, the greater turnaround we'll have. And what I mean by that is as we start to look at, I mean, you said something right on point in terms of not being reactive and reviewing utilization after the fact. Well, how do we change that mindset and steer employees before the care actually happens? And, you can use carrot or the stick kind of mindset. The carrot, I think, is a lot better. And
Hmm.
that's simple things. Like, I love going back into a plan and getting rid of high deductible healthcare plans and going back to more of a copay structure. Well, how do you get the employees to use those plans, right? You say, well, there is still a deductible here, but you don't have to use this deductible if you go through care navigation. So if I'm looking at paying a $20 copay or a $3,000 deductible, I'm picking up the phone and using care navigation to pay $20.
Right.
I'm using the phone. Maybe I'm older, but I mean, I'm sure the younger generation is going to send a text or whatever it will be. But I think that's some of the things that can change, like how we steer employees to access care. And I think steer is a tough word. I mean, it's steering them to help them, not to prevent them from getting care, right? Like, we want them to get quality care, still give them the option to choose whoever they want, but make
Yeah.
sure that, hey, if I'm the employer and it's going to cost me, it may cost them only 3,000. Well, I'm paying the flip side of that on utilization. That claim could be anywhere from 50 to 500,000, which the employee's not going to see that side of it. So
Yeah.
that's one thing. The other thing that I used to use is I used to come across, I did a lot of consulting in the auto dealership space. And I
Hmm.
come across a dealer and they say, you know what, we don't get it. Like, our people aren't enrolling in the plan. And when I see the plans, I'm like, well, guys, these plans are not affordable. Like, yeah, the
Or not
premium may be,
reasonable.
I'm
Right.
like,
Yeah.
this doesn't make sense. And I'd have to have that, let's say, come to Jesus conversation of, I'm just going to talk to you straight here. You're either going to pay now or pay later. And they'd say, well, what do you mean? I'm like, well, if you don't offer some type of coverage that is very affordable and start to put on healthy risk, get healthy employees on your plan, you're only going to track the employees that definitely need health insurance, that maybe have a chronic illness or are older. And then when you get your renewal, you're going to pay later because
Yep.
now you've created an unhealthy or a high risk pool. So it's either one or the other. And I'm going to keep on going here just because you brought up
Go for it.
something earlier on, like, compensation on advisors or brokers. And I've been on both sides of it, right? So it's been nice to get an increase on my comp for doing nothing and just coming back and just taking a spreadsheet and saying, here are your options. Which one do you want to pick? Pick one, you know. That's been great, but I really have transitioned over to having a flat comp, per employee per month, a flat number. And I usually explain it as, it doesn't matter if you spend $10 million or $1 million. I'm getting the same compensation. I
Hmm.
said, we'll revise this in the following year. I said, performs, once the plan performs the way it said it would perform, and I've reduced your total spend, I may ask you for an increase in my comp. But I feel like I need to justify getting paid more.
Right.
So that's
Right.
really what's worked for me. Um, and this, not, but it truly, nothing's the same. It's not the same as in my back door in Connecticut, right when I crossed the border in New York, all the way down to last month I was in Georgia and Florida. Entirely different conversations. It's all relative to where you are. It's getting better and better. We're going to have challenges in the small group. It's definitely going to be the last place where the insurance carriers can hide their profits. Um, we're going to have different segments in the next few years: the small micro groups, the mid-sized groups, and large group. Um, all have different needs.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that, to your point earlier, I think there's going to be a great wake-up call for a lot of fiduciary responsibilities. I think there's going to be a lot of wake-up calls for the data transparency. I think there's going to be a lot of good shakeup because, to your point, we need to have this renaissance for sure. And I don't know if it's a generational thing. I don't know if it's people are just fed up of what it is. I don't know if it's just people like you and I that are trying to push the status quo when it comes to the healthcare industry. I would like to say it's a combination of everything, but something is on the horizon for change. And us as Americans, I think we have the right to be able to get on our soapbox and jump up and down and say, hey, this isn't right. We need to make it right. We need to make it fair. We need to make it legitimate for everybody. And I think that that's, one of the main reasons why we started behind the premium because for the most part, a lot of employees want to know that when they have money taken out of their paycheck to pay for health insurance, that they're going to be covered, that they're not going to go into debt to be able to cover their medical expenses that do come up. And I think there's a real debt crisis there as well. But the current mechanisms that we have in place are not helping us as Americans. It's hurting us. But that's why we need to have these kind of conversations. That's why we need to have these type of people like yourself that are out there pushing to make things change. Um, so my last question to you is, for those that are listening in, either broker wise or even just employer, I should say, what advice would you give them for 2027? What could they be working on right now to make their life so much better when it comes renewal time?
So, from the employer side, is that what you're asking?
Yep.
So, I'm actually going to give it from the advisor side. If you're an advisor of someone like me, what I would do is educate yourself. I'd listen to something like this podcast, but there's so much material out there that even if you just spend a half an hour a day, you'll be better than 90% of the advisors and brokers out there because this is continually changing. I recently was with a friend of mine. He said, I've been in this business for 3 decades. And I said to him, and I'd only say this to him because he's my friend. I said, I'll leave his name out. But I said, if you're not attuned to what has happened in the last decade, your 30 years in the business only does one thing. It just makes you old. I said, you got to be focused on what's going on right now because what we did 5 years, 10 years, 20 years ago is entirely different. From the employer side, what I would do right now is, you know, relationships in this business are probably the biggest challenge. And a lot of them have good relationships with their broker advisor. I would just ask them simple questions like, can you tell me where all the premium, where all the funds that I'm spending on healthcare is going? And then I would look to align yourself with an advisor that has more of a strategic mindset, multi year, right? Because there are thousands of solutions out there. Like when I go to a benefit conference and I'm around all the people that are speaking my language, you walk away almost drunk from the amount of insurance information you're getting and how many different solutions you can implement. The reality is you can't go back to employers and implement all those things at once. It has to be slowly implemented. And the harder as advisors, I know I'm shifting back to the advisor because I am one. But the harder we make this and more complicated, the harder it becomes for the employer to understand what they should be doing. So the
Yep.
simpler we make this, and it starts from reviewing and understanding where you're currently at, and do you understand it? And if you don't understand it, make sure you're hiring someone that can explain it to you in a way that you can understand it. So I think I got
Love
to
that.
work on simplifying my answers, but those are those are some of the things that we need to start doing. When health insurance is offered the correct way, it becomes an asset. It's almost like an investment to the company to attract the right type of quality employees.
Yep. Yep. I would agree with you there. I've seen numerous companies that I've spoken with take their benefits plan and turn them into recruiting and retention tools. That's for sure. So it is possible, and uh, there's definitely lots of capabilities out there. It's just getting hooked up with the right plan, the right advisor, the right broker. There's a lot of moving pieces and a lot of key stakeholders in this, and it's just not a one solution fits all or one solution solves everything. I think it's a combination of everybody coming together for the greater benefit of the employer and the employees themselves. So, uh, but anyways, Ken, thank you so much. It has been awesome. We're a few minutes over time here, but I went a little bit over because we were having some internet issues there for a
Yeah,
little bit. But
that's on me.
no, no, it's on me as well. So, but thanks so much for coming in. Do you want to take a second and just kind of do a quick little outro of how people can get a hold of you, get connected with you, all that?
I do. Thank you. Ken Wosczyna, EBA-1.com. It's funny, my website doesn't get much traffic now that LinkedIn is probably the best place to find me. My number is 203-856-8773, and you'll see all my contact on my LinkedIn profile. If you are an employer listening to this and you're struggling with managing your health care, your health insurance spend, love to speak with you. Or if there's any advisors out there that are just looking to run some things off from a different viewpoint, love to talk to you also.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Ken. We appreciate you. And thanks to everybody for tuning in. We appreciate the love and support. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Helps us beat the algorithms of the various platforms that we are on. And our goal is to try to always bring you great content that's going on behind the premium, talk about those topics as well. We want to thank our sponsor, Well Trio, for sponsoring this episode as well. And with that being said, thanks everybody, and we'll catch you on Wednesday for our next roundtable. Thanks again, Ken. We appreciate you, and
Thank
we'll
you. I
chat with you
appreciate it.
guys. Yep, we'll chat with you guys soon. Bye bye.
Bye.